Hi guys, I'm Ruslan. Let's get into this shocking story right now.
I found out I was a parent because IKEA emailed me a delivery window for a bunk bed I didn't order, to an address I didn't recognize, with my name on the receipt. Thank you for your purchase, Alex, the email said cheerfully, like it had attended our wedding. Your order will arrive between 12 to 4 p.m. at 19 Larch Court. The last four digits of the card were mine. The billing address was ours. The shipping address was not. My wife, Jade, was chopping parsley at the kitchen counter, the kind of neat, rhythmic chopping that makes you think a life can be arranged into small green pieces. She's a social worker, which means she carries other people's emergencies the way firemen carry ladders, muscle memory first, feelings later. What's at 19 Larch Court? I asked, holding up my phone. She didn't look up. HM. A bunk bed is being delivered there today. On our card. Her knife stopped. The parsley held its breath. I should tell you something, she said, which is the sentence you never want to hear when your inbox is already confessing. Start with the part where we bought furniture for a house we don't live in. She set the knife down and used both hands to pinch the bridge of her nose, as if she could pull the right words out like a splinter. Emergency foster placement, she said. 2 brothers, it's temporary. How temporary? 48 hours, she said, too fast. 72 at most. And the address. A respite unit, she said. They had cots. I wanted them to have beds. I stared at the order confirmation again. Why is my name on it? Because they needed a second adult on the home study, she said. And now we were at the part of the forest where the trees lean in. I put you down. You put me down, I repeated, as if saying it could make it less true. It was paperwork, she said, and even she winced at how thin that sounded. I meant to tell you before it mattered. When exactly would that be, before or after the bunk bed turned into people? She looked at the parsley like it had answers. After the last year, she said quietly, with us circling and never landing, I thought. She stopped. I thought doing something good would pull us forward. I wanted to say the obvious thing about consent and signatures and how forging someone into parenthood is a kind of violence even when there isn't any blood. What I said was, what are their names? Riley, she said, 7, and Micah, 5. They like dinosaurs. Riley says all the tyrannosaurs were misunderstood. I sat down because a snow globe had just been shaken in my chest and I needed the furniture to be loyal. I remembered a conversation from last winter when we stood in a Target aisle looking at tiny socks, both of us not saying the word infertility out loud because we were afraid it would hear us and feel invited. I remembered Jade saying, what if family is a verb we can do without biology? I remembered nodding like a person who believed his life was capable of being repainted without the primer. How long have you been an emergency foster? I asked. Not long, she said. A few weekends, here and there. And by you mean we, because my name is on the form. She didn't throw herself on the mercy of the court. That would have made it easier. She just stood there with her hands on the counter and took the hit like a person who knows she deserves to be hit. But kindly, I shouldn't have signed for you, she said. I know. What else did you sign for me? Background check consent, she said. Home safety checklist. A commitment to be reachable. I laughed once and it sounded like something breaking in a distant room. Reachable, I repeated. You put my name on a promise to answer a phone I didn't know could ring. The doorbell rang. We both jumped, absurdly, like the email had become a man. It was the plumber. Jade had called him about the eternally sulking bathroom sink. Life and betrayal are both citizens of the same day. I'll go to Larch Court, I said, when the pipe stopped complaining. If I'm on the paper, I get to be on the porch. She started to say something. I held up a hand I hoped looked more like a pause than a stop. I'm not going to burn the bed, I said. I'm going to meet the people you bought it for. Larch Court was a dead-end street where tricycles go to retire. Number 19 was a little brown house with a ramp up to the door and chalk drawings on the front walk that had been half-rained into impressionism. A van with a county seal idled at the curb while a woman I recognized from staff meetings, wrestled with a bag of linens. Her name was Laurel. She had the stance of a person who knows the weight of a tantrum and a toolbox. "I'm Alex," I said, and her face did a small, careful thing. "On the paperwork," I added. "You're early," she said. "Beds aren't here yet." "Good," I said. I brought a drill. Riley and Micah were sitting at the kitchen table, coloring dinosaurs that looked like they had seen some things. Riley had the look older kids get when grown-ups have erased their calendar. Too many times half wary, half evaluator. He watched me the way a bouncer watches a line. "You the bed guy?" he asked. "I am now," I said. "You got opinions on ladder placement?" "Left side," he said. "So Micah can't kick me in the face when he climbs." Noted. The IKEA truck arrived like it knew our lives needed cardboard. The bunk bed promised an easy assembly on the picture. The words inside were a cryptic hymn. Laurel and I and a woman named Jun who ran the respite house began translating. Alan wrenched into architecture. Halfway through, Jade texted, "I can come help." Or get space. "Tell me what's right." "Left side ladder," I typed back. It was not a truce. It was a topography. We built. The boys took turns helping, which in this context meant scattering screws with the precision of a NASA launch. When the frame finally understood itself and held still, we made the beds with sheets that had tiny planets on them. Michael lay down on the bottom bunk and sighed with his whole body. Riley pretended not to care and then allowed himself to care, the way generals do after wars. "Do you live here?" he asked me, voice casual enough to hide the real question. "No," I said, "but I'll be back with a toolbox if the ladder squeaks." "What if the ladder is perfect?" he asked, which is an absolutely fair question for any relationship. "Then I'll come back with pancakes," I said. After, in the driveway, Laurel put her hands in her jacket pockets and watched the boys show each other how to jump the last 2 stairs, every time surprised by gravity. "She shouldn't have signed for you," she said without preamble. "We nudge workers to keep their households on paper the way they are in life, but the system eats good intentions for breakfast." "I'm not here to make her small," I said. "You're here to see if you can be big," she said. "That's harder." I went home. Jade was at the table with a cup of tea that had retired from being hot an hour before. She had that look again, the one where she is both the person in the wrong and the person in charge of fixing it. "I'm sorry," she said, and didn't put frosting on it. "I should have asked before I put your name where your mouth hadn't been." "Why didn't you?" "Because," she took a breath, "because after the last treatment, when we sat in the Target sock aisle and didn't say the word we were both thinking, I felt useless in a way that scared me more than any hard day at work. Emergency fosters are what happens when someone has to sleep somewhere they didn't wake up. I thought maybe I could be useful, and I thought maybe if I brought you into it and it went well, the goodness would rub off on us and make us less stuck. There are sentences you want to reject on principle. There are also sentences that sit down beside you and refuse to move, because they are true enough. I don't want to be tricked into a family," I said, "but I also don't want to be a person who's afraid of one." We made a deal that night, not about forever, but about tomorrow. She would call the county and correct the paperwork. My name came off anything I hadn't signed. It stayed only where both our initials lived. I would schedule a home study if I decided to opt in, not because a crisis needed a signature, but because I did. We would do 48 hours together at Large Court, as volunteers, as people who could build ladders that didn't squeak. After 48 hours, we would tell each other the truth about how our bodies felt when small heads fell asleep in a room we built. The next day I brought pancakes, as promised. The boys ate them like a dare. Riley asked questions that were actually requests. "Do you have a dog? Can you fix bikes? Do you know what a Utahraptor is?" I told him we had a plant we hadn't killed yet and that counted as a pet. That we owned a pump and a stubbornness and could probably make a bike remember how to be a circle. That Utahraptors are to velociraptors what real life is to movies. Bigger, scarier, and somehow cooler when you understand the math. When we were packing up, Micah slipped his hand into Jade's the way exhausted birds truss branches. I felt something in me make room. It wasn't a choir. It was the quiet sound a drawer makes when it finally slides all the way in. That night, we did not pretend not to be wrecked. We sat on the floor with the paperwork spread out like a map and asked, which parts of us are big enough for this? which parts need training, which parts are trying to use children as therapy for our marriage, and therefore need to be gently escorted out. On Sunday, the boy's aunt from the towns over showed up with a bag of clothes and a face that said, "We are not ready, but we are willing." Laurel hugged her like people do when the state becomes a person again. We loaded the boys into her car with dinosaurs and a ladder squeak, report card, and a promise that if the bunk bed ever betrayed them, we'd be back with tools. When the driveway was empty, Jade and I stood in the kitchen and looked at each other like a scaffolding we hoped would hold. "I'll call tomorrow," she said, "and tell them to audit the file. Fix my mess. Tell them to add me," I said. Her eyes filled like someone had turned a faucet a quarter turn. "You're sure?" "No," I said. "I'm honest, but I'm willing to be sure in public." We did the home study. We installed outlet covers and argued about whether magnets counted as choking hazards and compromised by throwing away only the small ones. We put our medications in a lockbox. We made a plan for school nights and emergencies and holidays. We got trained in acronyms that contain entire philosophies, like TBRINICPC, and decided to use them as verbs because everything worth doing is. One evening, a month later, Jade came home with a backpack and a look that meant the phone had rung. "One night," she said. "Maybe two. A girl, 9. Name's Eva. Likes cats. Hates oranges." We said yes. We made spaghetti and pulled out the extra toothbrush and set a glass of water by the bed before anyone was thirsty. Eva arrived carrying a stuffed animal that had been loved into a treaty. She looked at us like people she might have to learn the names of. She ate exactly 4 bites and declared victory. She asked if she could sleep with the lamp on, and then turned it off herself after 30 minutes. In the morning she told me our house smelled like laundry and cinnamon and not like soap that hurts. I took that as the highest compliment. Not all nights were tidy. There was a Tuesday with vomit and a Saturday with a panic attack and a Wednesday when a boy named Jace hid under our table and refused to come out until I crawled under, too. And we counted the screws holding the table together like they were stars. But we began to build a muscle that had been waiting under our skin, a capacity for chaos that didn't destroy us. It did not make our infertility less cruel. It made it bearable in the way that being part of a neighborhood makes rent bearable. It also made clear the difference between saving and hosting. Saving pretends we are the answer. Hosting remembers we are the room where answers can rest for a night. Months later, Riley and Micah visited with their aunt, who had figured out how to be an aunt and then a guardian and then a person again. They brought a photo of the bunk bed with 3 dinosaur stickers and a bold red X over the squeaky ladder, which they had moved to the right because opinions evolve. We made pancakes. Riley told me Utahraptors have a claw that could cut a man's leg, but they probably used it for climbing, not slashing, he said. Movies lie. On the porch, Jade apologized again. The way you apologize when you know a wound became a scar, and you want to acknowledge the shape without reopening it. "I betrayed your consent," she said. "I took your name without asking and stapled it to something holy." "You did," I said, "and you also gave me a door to walk through." I'm angry about the first part and grateful for the second. Both can be true. We framed the audit email from IKEA as a joke and hung it by the light switch. It reads like a prophecy. Your order will arrive between 12 to 4 p.m. Most of the good things in our life have, although they rarely knock. If you ask me what betrayal is now, I'll say this. It's when someone builds a future that requires your name and forgets to invite your voice. It can be signing a lease or a form or a receipt. It can be a bunk bed at an address you've never been. But I'll add this. Sometimes the path from betrayal to trust is 48 hours long and includes an Allen wrench. So tell me in the comments if your partner forged your name to do something good, in this case, taking an emergency foster kids. Would you see it as unforgivable or fixable with boundaries? And what would your first rule be if you said yes to the next call?